Devin Pike with the Dallas International Film Festival. And you hear stories of obsession and people latching on to a certain television character or show or plot device. This happens in the true story that inspired Kumiko the Treasure Hunter, where a woman was obsessed with the movie Fargo and was convinced that the treasure that was buried in the film actually existed, quits her job in Japan and comes to America to find the treasure. The co-writer of the film, Nathan Zellner, is here. First off, Nathan, thank you for bringing this film to the festival. It's a gas of a film.
Oh, thanks. Thanks.
I'm curious when you first heard the story that inspired the film.
Well, the story originated in 2001, and my brother and I just stumbled across this blurb of it online, and this was before Facebook and Twitter, so it didn't really explode and it didn't really get exploited. And conversely, there wasn't really a lot of information about it. It was sort of like the end result or the end of the story as far as how we perceived it. This woman was found in Minnesota who had come from Tokyo, and they said she was obsessed with finding the mythical fortune. So we went a little crazy trying to figure out the background of who would go on such a journey and who she was, and because it really struck us that it was like a modern day treasure hunt, which never happens anymore. Everything is kind of figured out, and everything's sort of, you can go on Google Maps and find anything you want. So this was sort of like, something that conquistadors would do during the age of exploration or something like that. So in sort of an exercise to process it ourselves, we just started writing this script. This came up with all this her backstory in Japan, and what kind of developed a character of who would go on this kind of quest. And years later, as more investigative reporting kind of came out and other people were looking into the legend, it really contradicted what we wrote, and it really debunked the original story. And so the original story turned into an urban myth, and the true story was much more depressing and just not as, there wasn't that element of fantasy to it. And when we first started reading some of the more facts, we just were like, no, this is not real. This is our version is real, and we just kind of kept with our version of the story.
Did you find that, given the very small amount of information you had, would you, at that point, as you're trying to flesh out her own motivations and her mental space, did you find that it was almost easier to have that small amount of information instead of having to have the larger base of facts as you're developing the script?
Yeah, I would say, I don't know if it made it easier, but it was nice having this very small thread of restrictions. We had 2 locations that we had to work with. We had Japan and Minnesota, and those inherently are wonderful juxtaposition of culture and climate, and that was something that was really exciting to us. And then just this idea of obsession and how that obsession can either be focused on one thing or just an idea. And so we took it more on the idea of a treasure hunt, and not necessarily, she is fixated on finding this fortune, but it's not really to do anything with it. It's just more like a conduit for this kind of journey that she wants to take, and that she does get out of her mundane life in Tokyo. And so when we started developing this character, we really explored, the film's almost broken into 2 halves, and the first half is her kind of cyclical life in Tokyo, and that's kind of different than a lot of quest films or stories where it's you always start at the beginning of the quest, and we're sort of in like this character study of her for a little while until we send her on this road trip. So
your lead, Rinko Kikuchi, is a DIF, or actually AFI Dallas alumni. She came in for the Brothers Bloom. Phenomenal actress, and just so she could stand completely still, and the range of emotion you can see on her face is just, it's phenomenal. Talk about having her as the centerpiece for your film.
Yeah, we were really lucky. It's a it's a very specific role to cast. You know, we needed somebody who, you know, not only was Japanese, but had a presence about them that could, you know, show a lot of thinking and emotion without, you know, talking. Because there's, you know, the film does play a little bit with language barrier and communication and relationship barriers, and so she's a little bit more reserved, and there's not a lot of dialogue. So we needed her to, you know, really, you had to see in her face what she was going through, and she's just, you know, strikingly beautiful and, you know, expressive. And it was just when we met her in, you know, we've been working on the script for a really long time before we made the film, and we met her in 2008, and you know, she had, it was great. She had the same sensibilities, liked a lot of the same filmmakers we did. At that time, she didn't speak English particularly well, if at all. And then by the time we made the film, she had learned to speak it, you know, pretty well. And that kind of, I don't know if that's a joke on how easy it is for her, you know, to learn English, or how long it took us to make the movie. But in either way, like it helped production, you know, being able to talk to her a little bit better, because we don't speak Japanese at all. But yeah, she just was, you know, like I said, once we met her, it was pretty obvious that there was only one person that we could put in this role, and you know, that's how we became obsessed with having her in the role.
As American filmmakers, it's a rarity to get over to Tokyo for a shoot. Talk a little bit about if you had a certain plan that you had to scrap because the realities of shooting in Tokyo wound up being much different than what you had planned for.
I mean, we didn't really scrap anything creatively. That's what was one of the things that took it a while to get off the ground was, you know, we wanted to have this sort of realistic view of, you know, Tokyo and Minnesota, and so you can't really fake Tokyo. It's a very, very unique city, and you know, the people there are very unique. So we knew that we had to shoot over there, and we had to shoot over there on a budget, and then we had to pair that with shooting in the dead of winter in Minnesota, again on a budget. So you know, having those two pieces match up and work together, you know, mainly with the weather, if either one of those slid, you were moved, you know, your production could move another year or so. And you know, that's just it's a hard thing to maintain when momentum is so important in filmmaking. But you know, we went over there, and we paired up with a really great production services company that specialized in international co-productions. And you know, most of the crew was bilingual. None of the cast was, but we had a superb AD that kind of, everybody over there understood the tone that we were going for, and so therefore we were all making the same movie, and any language barrier that we came across ourselves was easy to get over, because you know, the idea of what we were making was communicated well in advance. So it actually went pretty smooth in that regard.
I generally hate asking this question, but because normally I'll get two responses, either the pain of no it's not, or the pleasure of yes it is. What are the future plans for Kumiko the Treasure Hunter if you don't get a chance to see it in the festival circuit? Is it going to get released into the wild?
I would hope so. Yeah, we're still working on that. You know, it's early in its festival life still. You know, we have a lot of festivals scheduled that we'll be going to, and you know, it's a different kind of film. You know, I think it challenges some audiences and their expectations, and you know, definitely with kind of the mixture of humor and pathos that we're going for. But you know, the ultimate goal is to reach you know, as wide an audience as possible with it. So you know, we hope that it gets out there and people can experience it in the theater, because it's a very striking film. So.
And it's been one of the festival highlights. Everybody who has, you know, said, here's the punch list, I got to see this, definitely got to see Kumiko the Treasure Hunter. Phenomenal film. Thank you for bringing it to the festival. We really appreciate it, and thanks for coming out to Dallas.
Oh, thank you so much for having us. This is one of our favorites. So.
You can find out more about Kumiko the Treasure Hunter and all of the alumni films from the festival at dallasfilm.org. Thanks a lot for bringing it out to us, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You bet.